mixed with the battle system from Outlaw Star, mixed with the No Man's Sky gameplay.
We're doing the podcast. We're doing the podcast right now during at the beginning.
Hello and welcome. My name is J.E. and with me today is my good old friend Alexander Gonzalez.
Yo.
And please remember that we are not game devs. How are you doing today, Alex?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself, Jay? How are you doing this fine April evening?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right. Thank you for asking. I thought you were going to go with the 420-ness of today.
I was approaching it and I was like, nah.
Yeah. That's what I thought. But those are not the drug-related days we're talking about today.
Nope.
Today, we are creating something new. Every week, that was all from memory because I couldn't find my place in the script. And then from
I was actually going to tell you, I've memorized the whole entire script.
Really? I have not because I
could actually go on. I could complete it for you. I think I could.
Because at that point, I was like, I had to do it from memory because I was looking for the script. But now that's as far as I know.
I could do it. Every week, We Are Not Game Devs, we create a new, exciting video game idea that we have always wanted to play, but do not have any knowledge or know how to create the wonderful experience that are video games. And
wow, perfect.
And today is my day to, dang it, I almost had it. And today is my day to create a video game. And we're going to begin with this basic concept. Or today's my day to host.
It was that, close enough. You got the gist of it. The first paragraph before today is my turn to present We Are Not Game Devs 151st IP. Let's begin with the basic concept.
There we go.
And
I did it in North Carolina where I did it the whole thing and I was like, oh, wow.
That's pretty impressive because I wrote it and I don't even have it memorized. But I feel like you're going to enjoy this one. I want a game where you play, it's going to be a third person, I guess. It could be a third person action game, maybe even a third person platformer with some shooting mechanic in it. But the main mechanic is you don't have a gun, you don't have like anything like that, but you do have a special power or maybe like some apparatus that allows you to use this special power or whatever. But you're going to essentially throw, and you're going to be able to see all the individual pieces when you do this. You're going to throw like debris out. Let's just, for the sake of ease of theater of the mind, you throw a handful of nails out in front of you, right? Enemies start coming towards you to attack you with whatever they're going to do to you. And the main mechanic of the game is you're going to hold out your hand or whatever button you press, and you press and hold. All those nails that you just threw out get sucked back in towards your hand, and that's how you kill enemy types, right? And when you attack the enemies, my idea is that they'll also kind of blow up in a particle explosion of quote-unquote nails. And then you could draw those in without the initial throw because they blow up into different particles. And then you draw those in to attack more enemies that come towards you. You know what I mean?
So it's going to be a push and pull, almost like magnetism.
Exactly.
With these materials.
Yeah.
This works. I like this.
And I think eventually you could earn or obtain new projectile types that have different effects. Like when you draw them in, they'll catch enemies on fire or freeze them or stuff like that, or like it does something different, and they'll look different too when you throw them out, like different weapon types, right? So maybe you throw ice shards or something.
Yeah, we can have like metallic looking debris where I'm imagining it almost like a D&D dice or something like that, and then there could be like red tinted ones, yellow tinted ones, blue tinted ones that have elemental effects on them.
Yeah, something like that. I don't think they're going to be kind of like... I want them all to look unique, and you'll be able to see individual ones. So I think like ice shards would be perfect. Like different shapes and sizes of ice that you just throw out, and then you draw back in, and it freezes your opponents. And then when you shatter them, they'll turn into ice particles and blow up, and then you draw those in type of thing.
Now, for the sake of fun, let's make it where if... for your special ability, you can draw all of them in, and then you can start attacking with melee with them. Like, so it extends your melee into like tentacles.
Like maybe you throw out a bunch of pieces of rock and then you draw them in and it turns into like a rock fist or something.
Yeah.
And then you could like use that. And I want it to be like when you punch someone with a rock fist, it blows up and turns into more particles with the enemy, and it blows up the enemy, and then you draw those in, and then it just gets larger and larger. I swallowed spit, sorry. And then you collect maybe for the rock one, and each element particle could have a different special, where like the rock one, as you keep pulling in particles, you get bigger and bigger, and eventually you have like a giant golem for a limited time before it like disintegrates or whatever, and you walk around as
exactly. Ooh, that'd be cool to put skills in certain trees. Because I could see another one being where you cover your enemies in so many of them that they just disintegrate into them too. Like you shoot a wave of them and then the wave comes over them and maybe disintegrates them. Or you can encapsulate a bunch of enemies together into like a planet, like a little planet thing. And then it just like crushes them. And then you just create more debris.
Right. Well, like, it turns them into a giant ball of something. Like maybe there's a weapon effect that like you throw it and it draws people in like a black hole type of situation.
What if we have three different trees? An elemental tree where you're mostly shooting and bringing them in, but it has different elemental effects, like maybe poison, fire, lightning, ice. And then there's another one where it's a tree where you buff yourself. So you bring them in and you can have wings, and then you can fly up high and then do a ground pound.
So like one tree that's more like makes the game more like a brawler. And then one tree that is more like what I'm talking about, where you draw stuff in and stuff.
Exactly. And then I think the third tree would be the one where, what could we do with that one? What's another style of play you could do with this debris?
I think maybe the third one will play more like it's just one giant thing, and it works kind of like a
like maybe it has more of like a mind of its own, where it's like its own existence on the battlefield.
I think that's kind of, but also like you throw one giant thing and it comes back to you. So it's just one, instead of a bunch of particles blowing up everywhere.
Maybe it's like 3 or 4, like it can be 1, 2, 3, or 4 of them, and they're smaller, but they do a lot more damage. And then you can do different stuff with them where you can upgrade the tree where they get sticky. So if it touches one, it'll let's say you shoot it past an enemy, it'll stick to one, but then stick to others. You can bring them all and then you can bring them all together into one, and then it just disintegrates them all.
Yeah, and I think also in this one you could have it one of the elemental power or elemental styles you could unlock have like 4 orbs spinning around you, so it's kind of like more of a defense thing. You could send them out one at a time, kind of like how Zenyatta uses his orbs, you know.
Oh yeah, and then on the other one we were talking about, where it's like the 4 orbs or the big one that you send out, then you can do different stuff where you can disintegrate it and then it'll touch everybody like water, and then bring it back together and bring them all in it. Or press another button and send out spikes that go through people and then disintegrate them into more shards.
Yeah. I also think like we could do more stuff like that, where I think at first it only has one effect, but then you can maybe start combining these trees in different ways to get different effects on your enemies. And so it just gets more and more crazy on screen what's actually happening. Just because I do want the main feel of the game to be like particle explosions and then using those particles.
That's what I'm thinking too, where everything ends with like a really big explosion where it's like a pop, and instead of, if you're like, I'm imagining instead of confetti, it's these shards you're talking about that are going to look really nice. So it's going to be like so for instance, that big almost Indiana Jones boulder that we'd be rolling through, when you press the button to extend the spikes, as each one went through and impaled an enemy, it'd be like pop, 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 and then particle shards would be like raining down everywhere, looking really nice.
Yeah. Do you kind of want it to have it so it's like both triggers, so L1 R or L2 R2 will both do are independent of each other, so you could like throw one shard out while gathering from the other trigger type of thing, and so you could
Yeah,
do
and then
multiple things at once, like two different
most
attacks.
definitely. Yeah, so even if you had like the big boulder out, just only because that's the only one that would be singular, it would do two different things.
Or even just the one giant ball that has a mind of its own and going around doing stuff on its own, and then, until you call it back, like a boomerang, or like that dude from Guardians of the Galaxy with the whistle arrow.
Ooh, I didn't
type of
even
thing.
think about that. We could even make that giant ball like so. For instance, it could maybe open and it would have like a mouth with like tooth shards on it, and it would be like dripping shards as like saliva. You could even do something like that.
Yeah,
Where it still
yeah,
looks like metallic or shardy, but it like still tries to consume people.
definitely. In terms of map structure and enemy types and stuff like that, I'd say that it's gonna feel more like a third person platformer where you're jumping around and attacking enemies that are all over the place. But what you're actually doing on screen, maybe it feels more like a third person bullet hell, because I feel like there's just gonna be enemies everywhere. Like, I think what's attacking
More like
you is
I was
gonna be
picturing you're running around the level as enemies attack you, similar to, if we were going to reference a video game, Doom, where it's like these demons are coming from everywhere, and you have to you're just going to be moving around attacking and kind of getting into a like an open air
I see.
place where you're going
Yeah.
to be jumping from platform to platform and kind of scaling the level while also holding these guys off. I was thinking about making this game on a totally different planet entirely, where there's different rules and different enemies attacking you. Maybe you're from outside
Yeah.
or something, or you were like exiled out and you're trying to get back in, and the reason you were exiled out was because you have these powers.
Definitely. How do you like the idea of also these powers also having a mobility aspect to them, where you could use them to like do a double jump or a triple jump? Or like,
Yeah, where like you can like bring them under you and then they can push you up,
yeah,
or
yeah.
you can use them and latch on to certain things and swing. Definitely, we could
Oh, cool.
totally
Yeah,
do those.
that's actually a good idea as well. And I don't think that's going to take away from your L2, R2 ways to attack, but they're just a way to get around. But you'll unlock them slowly. Like, once you reach level 5, you get the double jump. Once you reach something else, you get like a jetpack boost.
And we
or
can
something
even
like that.
Yeah, we can even make it where eventually, like, one of the last powers you get is that you take no fall damage. When you jump off, they'll create like a cushion, and then it'll be like a swift transition. Like, you'll fall into them and they'll pop and they'll like hold you so you take no fall damage. So then you can jump wherever you want and scale.
I mean, even then, I think you mentioned earlier in the episode that you could grow wings with these things. And I think maybe, yeah, near the end of the game, you could just straight up fly and just fly around. And then maybe it doesn't even have to be near the end of the game. Maybe this is something we introduce like midway through, and there are enemies in the sky as well. It's not just on the ground. You don't know this until you get up there.
Yeah, this game's going to feel really cool to play. I already feel it.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's talk about art style a little bit. I do see this kind of more just colorful, bright, cartoony, just over the top colors, and
I'm thinking so too.
yeah.
I almost envisioned it a little shiny as well. Like, because I see these things having particle effects and then the light hitting them, maybe very next gen, really get in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely. Music. What kind of music are we listening to?
If I had to say, I'm not really selective about anything in particular. I would just want it to be catchy. It's not going to be slow music, because you're going to want to kind of go through the level, and like the music has to help with the flow, is what I'm saying. This game sounds like there's a certain flow of gameplay depending on how you play it, and you want to stay in that. You don't want to be just not moving. You want to keep like flying, moving around, hitting enemies, creating more particles until you have just a bunch around you.
Yeah. Did you ever play a game called Ape Out?
I don't think so.
I don't want to do exactly what Ape Out did, where every action you did contributed to the music. I think that is kind of where I'm going for, where I feel like the soundtrack would be mostly like synth and like more like spacey kind of sounds, but the majority of what you're actually listening to is like percussion noises. And I think every time you blow up characters, it adds to the music, where like you blow up a character and that's like a crash cymbal that goes off and stuff like that.
Oh, I like that idea.
Yeah, and the music kind of dynamically changes as you do stuff, kind of like how Tetris Effect does it. If you ever played Tetris Effect, where every time you spin, it
or
adds
luminous.
the music.
It's basically it's almost like a splash of color with a bang of sound. So every time you kill an enemy, it interacts. So when you do them one by one, or one after the other, it creates almost like music on top of the music. So it feels like a bonus.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a very slight soundtrack where there's something going on. And it'll pick up during boss fights and stuff like that. Maybe boss fights have more orchestrated soundtracks with added elements every time you do blow up ads or whatever that do spawn around the boss. But yeah, generally speaking, it's going to be mostly about the sounds that you hear when you blow things up and destroy enemies and they blow up. And then that all kind of just adds to the symphony of noise and music that you hear.
No, I'm liking that. I'm right there with you.
Pricing. How much?
$60.
$60. That's exactly. It's 70, I guess now. All right, Alex. It's time to start your timer, because it's time to name this game.
Here we go and begin.
Draw. Like
people are gonna think it's an art game. Magnetism. What if we called it polar? Like two poles.
Like POLAR? Polar?
Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
we'll call it polar.
Polar at 25 seconds. So, Polar is a game where you must repel and attract these different shards of, I would want to say, minerals. And you must use your powers to navigate a new world where you're in exile and you must fight to be accepted. Repel different shards with elemental abilities to mess with your enemies. Use one big boulder with effects as you bring all your shards together. Or beat up your enemies by augmenting your own body in Polar.
All right, so I think we have a game here. Alex, what do you think? Would this be a game you'd want to play? And is it fun?
Yeah, this is a game right up my alley. I would play the shit out of this game. It looks good, and it has like a good battle system and a flow. We didn't even really make up a story. I just made it up kind of on the spot right there.
Like, I don't think it's the story is what you're playing this game for. Like, I feel like it feels to me like a launch game that comes out with a system to show off the amazing, beautiful particles that can all be displayed on screen at once. And
while
you're not
being
playing
like
it
a
for the
great
story.
flow, too.
Yeah. And I think there will be a story, and maybe we could even make it slightly comical and like kind of funny, and maybe
I
have
wonder,
like that kind of feel to it.
I know we're backpedaling here, but I think people are probably screaming at us like, why didn't we add a multiplayer aspect to this where you can play with different people and just go in there and just
like a Lego game type of thing
and kill it. Just make people into a bunch of particles, run through it, almost like a Left 4 Dead feel.
I'm sure that could be fun, but I feel like that's something for the sequel. We'll have to get it down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Polars.
Polarity.
All right, now that we have a complete game, what game studio would you assign to make Polar the best? And I think there's only one clear answer.
I think there's a couple.
I think there's just one person that has to make this game were ever to be made. But
and who's that?
What's the first thing that you think though?
For me, I was like Arcane Studios could definitely
interesting.
Do this.
That's not at all the vibe I was going for.
They are a little dark.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, who better to give this to than Insomniac?
Yeah, they would do a great job.
I mean, in my head, it's pretty much just Ratchet and Clank, really. but focus on
Nah,
one aspect of
yeah.
it.
Okay. I think there's another studio. There's a couple studios out there, man, like Remedy.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
They could definitely do it.
I think the team at Sony that made Knack could definitely do it.
Oh, don't do that.
But I mean, you
I
know
mean,
what I
they
mean?
could.
With all the particles and all that stuff.
And then Irrational Games. They did BioShock. They do this.
Interesting. Yeah, no, but I do think that this is exactly what Insomniac does. You know,
That's
colorful
true.
games with big explosions and crazy weapon effects and all that stuff. Even
No,
look
you're
at
right about that.
Spider-Man. You know, like all the webs and stuff that you see on screen, and like all the different powers that combine it all together. And with that, 151st. Is that how you say that?
Yeah. You nailed it.
151st IP has gone gold. We hope you look forward to this. We hope you look forward to this experience that will probably never release.
I think this one will.
You can write to @poundgames@gmail.com if you have anything to patch into the game we created today. Also, give us feedback. We're still learning how to make the show better, and your feedback really helps. We have a Patreon. If you'd like to back our ideas, please head over to patreon.com/wearenotgamedevs. Patrons receive episodes 2 days early and an extra podcast at the beginning, which caught the tail end of our conversation at the beginning of this episode. That's patreon.com/wearenotgamedevs. If you liked our show, why not subscribe and give us all the stars on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Store, Spotify, YouTube, and more. And if they ask for a review, instead of reviewing our show, become your inner game critic and review Polar, the video game we just created. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back next Friday with another new IP. Again, my name is J.E.
I'm AG.
Thank you. And please remember that we are not game devs.
I'm Batman. I feel like if I were to honestly be Batman, my voice is too unique where people are like, Alex, what are you doing playing as Batman?
I am not a giant Batman fan, but if they were ever to do an Asian Batman, I think I'm the choice there. I think I'm the obvious choice because I'm Batman.
Yeah, it works way better with you. Oh, man.